Part 1, Chapter 11, Gateway. Jeffrey A. Rogers, a vice president of a big company, was once taught the simple idea of pausing to refresh. It began when Jeff realized that as he drove home from work each evening, his mind was still focused on work-related projects. We all know this feeling. We may have left the office physically, but we are very much still there mentally, as our minds get caught in the endless loop of replaying the events of today and worrying about all the things we need to get done the following day. So now, as he gets to the door of his house, he applies what he calls the pause that refreshes. He stops for just a moment. He closes his eyes. He breathes in and out once, deeply and slowly. As he exhales, he lets the work issues fall away. This allows him to walk through the front door to his family with more singleness of purpose. It supports the sentiment attributed to Lao Tzu. In work, do what you enjoy. In family life, be completely present. Exercise 1. Gestures and speech used similar neural circuits as they developed in our evolutionary history. University of Chicago psycholinguist David McNeil was the first to suggest this. He thought nonverbal and verbal skills might retain their strong ties even though they've diverged into separate behavioral spheres. He was right. Studies confirmed it with a puzzling finding. People who could no longer move their limbs after a brain injury also increasingly lost their ability to communicate verbally. Studies of babies showed the same direct association. We now know that infants do not gain a more sophisticated vocabulary until their fine motor finger control improves. That's a remarkable finding. Gestures are windows into thought processes, McNeil says. Exercise 2. Believe it or not, your child craves limits. She truly needs a flexible sense of order and will grow anxious without it. Think of limits as an expanding corral. Limits provide a physical environment in which your child can feel safe and can learn. As she grows more capable, the boundaries will expand. She begins in the womb, expands to a bassinet, and then to her bed. You may feel your 3-year-old is too young for an overnight visit to a playmate's home. By the time she is 5 or 6, you may occasionally consider it, and by the time she's 10, you may be ready to say yes to a pajama party. Your child's readiness determines how the boundaries expand. Your child does not want control or dominance, but a structure that encourages her to think, to make choices, and to take chances. Exercise 3. Once a staple crop is established, we have what economists call a lock-in. A pattern continues because it is cheap to replicate and would be expensive, both financially and psychologically, to change. The whole of North European agriculture is based around a highly complex but very efficient system of wheat and small grain production. From the plow types to the bakeries and pasta factories, everything is set up to deal with wheat. So although the potato came early and proved far more productive and well-adapted than wheat, wheat remains the staple food, except in areas too poor and marginal to afford it. The iron hand of economics forced the impoverished Irish and Poles to live on potatoes in the old days, but they yearned for bread, and now they can afford bread and are eating fewer potatoes. Potatoes added themselves to the system but did not destroy it. Exercise 4. Lee D. Ross and his colleagues carried out interesting experiments. Contrary to the assumption that it is the nature of human beings to grab as many resources as possible, these experiments show that people are willing to share resources equally. However, those who have more tend to justify this inequality. Human beings want a fair world. However, fairness in the future is judged differently from fairness in the past. We define fairness as equal sharing, as long as the sharing lies in the future. When we have accumulated more than others, we tend to believe we deserve it. Loss aversion, the tendency of people to dislike losses significantly more than they like gains, plays into these psychological preferences. We don't mind sharing equally in the future, but we do not like to lose what we have. These psychological phenomena strengthen conservative stances, leading people to evaluate those who want another distribution of resources as aggressors. Exercise 5. The idea of starting at the bottom and working one's way up may appear sound, but the major objection to it is this: too many of those who begin at the bottom never manage to lift their heads high enough to be seen by opportunity, so they remain at the bottom. It should be remembered also that the outlook from the bottom is not so very bright or encouraging. It has a tendency to kill off ambition. We call it getting into a rut, which means we accept our fate because we formed the habit of daily routine, a habit that finally becomes so strong we cease to try to throw it off. And that is another reason why it pays to start 1 or 2 steps above the bottom. By so doing, one forms the habit of looking around, of observing how others get ahead, of seeing opportunity, and of embracing it without hesitation. Exercise 6. Hobbes held that if we knew in advance the worst that war could do to us, that knowledge would be an effective preventative measure. He was writing specifically about civil war as opposed to international war, because he felt that closeness gives a greater potential to wound. Consider the constructive relations the United States developed with Germany and Japan, beginning immediately after the terrible events of World War II. Then compare that with the overheated emotional reaction you are still bound to get by bringing up the Civil War just about anywhere in the American South. The war between the states is still being fought at home on many levels, almost a century and a half later, while our foreign enemies of 50 years ago are now our friends. Similarly, family feuds are more bitter and lasting than neighborly disputes.